Hey, everybody, welcome into Folklore and Flourish. Welcome in for May 18th. May 18th, it's a big day. We are in the week of Sacred Body and Desire in our month of May, which is all about creation and fertility. It is the archetype of the life giver, and today we get conception, the theme of life sparking. So our lesson is that creation happens quietly. We get to see that today through Mayan, Norse, Japanese, and Celtic folklore and tradition. We're going to see the conception. Again, this is not an episode where it needs any explicit warnings or sexual content in that way or format. We are looking at conception in a much more divine, spiritual, folkloric light. So keep that in mind. But yes, we're going to look at life sparking. When you listen to these stories today, think about what new life is stirring within you. So what new life is stirring within you, and then sit in stillness for several minutes without seeking insight or outcome. So just sit in stillness for a couple minutes, and maybe after you're done, think about what life was stirring in you. What is some new stuff sparking within you? So I'm going to leave you today with the application to trust that something meaningful can begin without announcement today. So something meaningful can begin without announcement today. And enjoy these 4 stories on the conception for May 18th. Again, we're in the week of Sacred Body and Desire, and our theme for today is Life Sparks. So enjoy these 4 stories. See ya. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1, The Hero Twins, Conception Through the Breath of the Unseen. In the sacred text of the Kichimaya, known as a Popol Vuh, creation does not begin loudly, nor through force alone, but through something subtle, quiet, and almost imperceptible. It begins in a place between worlds, where life has not yet fully formed, yet the potential for it already exists. Here in the shadowed realm of Xibalba, the underworld, the story unfolds that reveals how life can begin not through physical union, as it is commonly understood, but through essence, through breath, through the unseen spark that carries creation forward. Before the birth of the hero twins, there was Hun Hunappu, a great ball player whose skill and presence disturbed the lords of Xibalba. Carried into the underworld to play the sacred ball game, he and his brother were tested, challenged, and ultimately defeated. Their deaths were not the end of their story, but the transformation of it. Hunappu's head was placed within the branches of a calabash tree, where it became something more than it had been, a vessel not of decay, but of latent life. The tree itself began to bear fruit, undistinguishable from the head that rested among them, a blending of life and death, of what had been and what could still become. One day, a young maiden named Ishkik, whose name means blood moon, approached the tree. Drawn by its mystery, by the quiet presence it held, she reached toward it, curious, open, unaware of the transformation that was about to occur. As she extended her arm, the head of Hunappu spoke, not in sound but in essence, and from it came a single act, spitting into her palm. This was not an act of violence nor of force, but of transmission, a passing of life through the most subtle of means. In that moment, something unseen took root within her, something that could not be observed outwardly, yet would change everything. Ishkik did not immediately understand what had occurred, yet within her life had begun. This conception was not marked by ceremony or by visible union, but by quiet initiation, by the introduction of a spark that would grow in its own time. When her condition became known, she faced doubt, rejection, and danger, for such a conception did not fit within the expectations of those around her. Yet she remained steady, carrying within her what had been given, trusting in the process that had begun beyond her control. Her journey was not easy. She was tested, challenged, sent to complete tasks meant to prove or disprove her truth. Yet through each trial, she succeeded, guided not only by her own strength, but by the life growing within her, the unseen force that continued to develop. Eventually, she reached the home of the mother of Hunapu, where she was accepted and where the twins she carried would be born. The hero twins, Hunapu and Shpal Anke, did not enter the world as ordinary children. From their conception, they carried within them the essence of transformation, the continuation of a story that had not ended with their father's death. Their lives would become a series of trials, challenges, and acts that reshaped the balance between worlds, ultimately overcoming the very forces that had once defeated their father. Yet all of this began in a moment so quiet it could easily be overlooked. A single gesture, a breath passed into a hand, a life sparked without spectacle. People who carried this story understood that creation does not always announce itself. It does not always arrive with clarity or certainty. Sometimes it begins in ways that are subtle, even confusing, emerging from places that seem unlikely, even impossible. The conception of the hero twins reveals that life can begin in the unseen, that what is forming may not yet have shape, yet holds within it the power to transform the world. This story also reflects a deeper truth about creation itself, that it is not always bound to the physical alone, but can occur through essence, through intention, through the transformation of something that cannot be touched, yet is deeply real. The breath, the word, the unseen force, these are all part of how life begins and continues. Ishkik's role is not passive, but active in its acceptance, in her willingness to carry what has been given, to nurture it despite uncertainty, to trust in what she cannot yet see. Thus, the story of the hero twins' conception stands as a powerful reflection of life's quiet beginnings. It reminds that not all creation is visible at its start, that what is most transformative often begins in stillness, in subtlety, in moments that seem small. In every idea not yet spoken, in every change not yet seen, in every life quietly forming beneath the surface, there is an echo of this story. Creation happens not only in the visible world, but in the unseen spaces where potential gathers, where life waits, and where, in its own time, it begins to emerge. Story 2, Yngling line, the quiet conception of sacred kingship. In the northern traditions of Scandinavia, where lineage was not merely a matter of inheritance, but of sacred continuity, there exists a story that does not begin with battle or conquest, but with a quiet, almost hidden moment of conception. It is found in the origins of the Yngling line, the royal lineage said to descend from the god Freyr, a being associated not with war or dominance, but with fertility, prosperity, and the generative forces of the earth. In this lineage, kingship often is not only political, but sacred, rooted in the idea that those who rule carry within them the spark of life-giving power, passed down not through spectacle, but through subtle transmission. Freyr was known as a god who brought abundance, who ensured the fertility of the land and the well-being of the people. His presence was tied to growth, to harvest, to the unseen forces that allowed life to flourish. Unlike the more distant and austere gods, Freyr was deeply connected to the cycles of nature, to the quiet processing that sustained existence. In the stories of the Yngling line, his influence does not end with his own life, but continues through human descendants, bridging the divide between divine and mortal through lineage. One of the earliest figures in this line is Fjolnir, said to be the son of Freyr. His conception is not described through dramatic union or divine intervention in the way other myths often portray, but rather through continuity, through the natural extension of life from one generation to the next. Yet within this simplicity lies a deeper meaning, that the divine does not always enter the world through extraordinary events, but can be carried quietly, woven into the fabric of human existence, passed from parent to child without outward sign. The Yngling line continues through generations, each ruler carrying within them the inherited essence, a connection to Freyr that is not always visible, yet understood to be present. These kings were seen not only as leaders, but as custodians of balance, responsible for maintaining harmony between the people and the land. Their legitimacy was tied not only to their actions, but to their origin, to the belief that they were born from a lineage that connected them to the forces of fertility and life itself. In this context, conception becomes more than a biological process. It is a moment of transmission, where something unseen is passed forward, where the qualities of the divine are carried into the human world. This transmission is not marked by spectacle, but by continuity, by the quiet persistence of life moving from one form to another. The people who told these stories understood that what is most powerful is not always what is most visible, that the forces that shape the world often operate beneath the surface, within the process that sustains life over time. There are also stories within this lineage that reflect the fragility of this connection, moments where the balance is disrupted, where rulers fail to uphold the harmony they are meant to maintain. In these instances, the consequences are not only political, but environmental, the land itself responding to the state of its leaders. Poor harvests, famine, and unrest were seen as reflections of imbalance, indications that the connection between ruler, land, and divine source had been weakened. In this way, the lineage was not a guarantee, but a responsibility, one that required awareness, alignment, and the ability to act in accordance with the forces it represented. The conception of each new generation within the Yngling line thus carried weight beyond the individual. It's not only the birth of a person, but the continuation of a connection, the renewal of a bond between worlds. Each child born into this line represented the potential for balance to be restored, for the relationship between people and land to be maintained. The quiet nature of this conception did not diminish its significance, but emphasized it, showing that what is most enduring often begins without announcement, without spectacle, yet carries within it the power to shape the future. The Norse understanding of lineage, as reflected in the Yngling line, reveals that creation does not always occur in singular, dramatic moments, but through ongoing processes, through the steady continuation of life across generations. It shows that the divine can be present within the ordinary, that sacredness can be found in the continuity of existence, in the passing of life from one to another. Thus, the story of the Yngling line stands as a reflection of quiet conception, of life that begins without fanfare, yet carries profound significance. It reminds that not all beginnings are marked by clear signs, that what is forming may not yet be visible, yet holds within it the potential to influence what comes next. In every lineage, in every continuation of life, there is this same principle that creation happens quietly, that the spark of life is often carried forward in ways that are subtle, yet deeply powerful. Story 3, Izanami, the quiet birth of the gods. In the earliest chronicles of Japan, where the world is described not as a sudden creation, but as a gradual forming, there is a moment where life begins not with thunder or spectacle, but in quiet, deliberate union. This is the story of Izanami and Izanagi, the divine pair entrusted with shaping the islands and bringing forth the kami, the spirits that inhabit all things. Yet within this broader story lies something more subtle, the nature of conception itself, how life emerges not only through action, but through alignment, patience, and the unseen spark that forms in stillness before it takes shape. At the beginning, the world was not yet solid, but a drifting mass, neither fully formed nor stable. Izanagi and Izanami were given the task of bringing order to this state, of creating land where there was none. Standing upon the floating bridge of heaven, they stirred the waters below with a jeweled spear. When they lifted it, drops fell and solidified, forming the first island. This act, though simple, carried within it the principle that creation begins with intention, with the focused movement that sets something into motion. Yet the formation of land was only the beginning. Life itself required something more, a union that would allow the unseen to take form. When Izanagi and Izanami came together, they did so in ritual, circling a sacred pillar and meeting on the other side. Their first attempt at union did not produce life as intended, for the balance between them was not yet aligned. This was not failure, but correction, an indication that creation requires harmony, that the conditions must be right for life to emerge. When they repeated the ritual with proper alignment, their union became fertile, and from it came the islands of Japan, followed by the kami, the spirits of wind, water, fire, and earth. Each birth was not abrupt, but part of a sequence, a gradual unfolding of existence from what had first been only potential. Izanami, as the mother, carried within her the process of creation, the quiet development of life before it enters the world. Each kami was conceived within her before being brought forth, a reminder that creation does not happen instantly, but forms in unseen spaces, in moments of stillness and internal transformation. Yet creation is not without cost, and when Izanami gave birth to the fire god, Kagutsuchi, the intensity of this creation overwhelmed her physical form. In this moment, the act of bringing life into being revealed its dual nature, that creation and destruction can exist together, that the spark of life can also carry the potential for loss. Izanami's passing into the underworld did not end her role in creation, but transformed it. She became part of the cycle that governs life and death, showing that what is conceived and brought into being does not remain fixed, but moves through phases. Izanagi, in his grief, sought to bring her back, yet what he encountered was not the same as what had been. This revealed another truth, that once creation has occurred, it cannot simply be reversed, that life moves forward, even through loss, even through change. The story of Izanami's conception of the kami is not one of immediate manifestation, but of process, of the quiet formation of life before it becomes visible. It reflects an understanding that creation is not only external, but internal, that what is brought into the world must first be held, developed, and aligned with. The ritual between Izanagi and Izanami emphasizes that union alone is not enough, that there must be balance, awareness, and intention for life to take form in a way that can sustain itself. From those who carry this story, there is an awareness that creation is ongoing, not confined to the beginning of the world, but present in every act that brings something new into existence. Whether it is the birth of a child, the formation of an idea, or the emergence of change, the same principles apply. There is a moment of intention, a period of unseen development, and finally, a manifestation into the world. Izanami's role reminds that the unseen phase is just as important as the visible, that what is forming quietly holds within it the power to shape what will come. Thus, Izanami stands as a figure of quiet conception, of the life that begins in stillness, in alignment, in the subtle merging of forces that allows something new to emerge. Her story carries the understanding that creation is not always loud or immediate, but often gentle, gradual, and deeply rooted in processes that cannot be rushed. In every moment where something begins within, before it is seen, there is her presence, the reminder that life starts in silence, that the spark forms quietly, and that what is conceived in this way carries the potential to transform the world. Story 4. Taliesin, the spark carried through transformation. In the misted hills and river valleys of ancient Wales, where knowledge was not only learned but lived, there is a story that begins not with birth as expected, but with a quiet, mysterious transformation. It is the story of Taliesin, one of the greatest poets of the Celtic tradition, whose life did not begin in the usual way, but emerged from a moment of unintended creation. A spark formed in stillness, then carried through a journey before it was finally brought into the world. In this, his story reflects the nature of conception not as a single event, but as a process, one that unfolds in stages, often unseen, often misunderstood, yet guided by forces beyond ordinary awareness. Before Taliesin was born, there was a woman named Ceridwen, a powerful enchantress who sought to grant her son wisdom and beauty through a magical brew. She prepared a cauldron, filling it with herbs and ingredients gathered with care, each one chosen for its properties, each one contributing to the transformation she intended. This brew was not to be rushed, but simmered slowly over time, requiring constant attention, for within it, something greater was forming, not yet visible, yet already alive with potential. Ceridwen placed a young boy, Gwion Bok, to tend the fire beneath the cauldron, instructing him to stir carefully and ensure it did not spill. For a year and a day the brew simmered, its contents transforming, its purpose drawing closer to completion. Then, in a moment both small and immense, 3 drops of the potion leapt from the cauldron and fell onto Gwion's thumb. Instinctively he placed his thumb into his mouth, and in that instant the knowledge and wisdom contained within the brew passed into him. The rest of the potion lost its power, for the essence of it had already been transferred. This moment was not planned, nor was it intended, yet it carried the full force of creation. Gwion, now filled with knowledge beyond his understanding, realized that what had occurred and fled, for he knew Ceridwen would seek him out. What followed was not immediate birth, but transformation, a series of changes that carried him through different forms, each one reflecting a stage in the process of becoming. He became a hare, swift and fleeing. Ceridwen pursued him as a hound. He became a fish, slipping into the water, and she followed as an otter. He became a bird, rising in the sky, and she pursued as a hawk. Finally, he became a grain of wheat, small, still, hidden among many others. In this form, he was consumed by Ceridwen, and in doing so, he entered into her body, not as he had been, but as something new, something ready to be formed and brought into the world. This was the true moment of conception. Not the initial spark of knowledge, but the point where the spark was carried into a space where it could grow, develop, and eventually emerge. Kiridwen, aware of what had happened, did not destroy what had formed within her. Instead, she carried it, allowing it to grow until the time came for it to be born. When Taliesin emerged, he was not simply a child, but a being of knowledge, a poet, whose words carried the depth of transformation he had undergone. Yet, even then, his journey was not immediately recognized, for he was set adrift, placed upon the water, where he would be found and raised, his true nature revealed over time. The story of Taliesin reveals that conception is not always direct or simple. It may begin in one place, pass through many forms, and only later take shape in a way that can be recognized. The spark of creation, once formed, does not remain static, but moves, adapts, and transforms until it finds the conditions in which it can emerge. Gyowen's journey through different forms reflects the stages of development, the movement from one state to another, the necessity of change in the process of becoming. For the people who carried this story, there was an understanding that what is created does not always follow a straight path, that what begins as a small, almost accidental moment can become something profound. The cauldron itself represents a space of transformation, where elements come together, where time and attention allow something new to form. The drops of the potion, the transformation of Gyowen, and the eventual birth, Taliesin, all point to the same truth, that creation happens quietly at first, in moments that may seem insignificant, yet carry within them the potential for great change. Thus, Taliesin stands as a figure of conception through transformation, the spark that is carried, reshaped, and eventually brought into the world. His story reminds that what is forming within may not be visible, that it may pass through stages that seem uncertain, yet each stage is part of the process. In every idea that grows over time, in every change that begins subtly, in every life that forms quietly before it is seen, there is this same pattern, the movement from spark to form, from unseen to known, from potential to presence. Daily thread for May 18th. Creation begins in quiet, unseen places. What is forming does not need to be rushed. The smallest spark can carry great becoming. Transformation is part of every beginning. What is meant will find its way into form. Trust the process before the outcome appears. Life stirs first in stillness, then in motion. What you carry now is already becoming.